Anyone who follows my blog on Tumblr or my Twitter account knows that I love railroads and locomotives and steam power, and I talk about those things almost every day on those sites. And one of the railways I've wanted to visit for years here in the U.S. is the Mount Washington Cog Railway. It climbs Mount Washington in New Hampshire. It was the first mountain climbing cog railway in the world, and that's a railway where it climbs a mountain, and the line is so steep that it needs a special third rack rail in between the two main rails that a cogwheel on the locomotive fits into to allow it to climb up the mountain, or else it would just be too steep and the locomotive's wheels would slip. And it's been steam operated since 1866. They have to this day a fully operational fleet of old steam locomotives that push the trains up the mountains. And in I believe it's been all steam until 2008. They built a new biodiesel locomotive to allow for faster trips up the mountain and to try to reduce pollution. And I'm not opposed to diesel locomotives themselves. In fact, a lot of my favorite locomotives are vintage diesels. But the problem is that the locomotives that they're building, the first one they built in 2008, they will let's just look at it. It does not look good at all. There's absolutely nothing aesthetically pleasing about this locomotive. It has none of the charm or the character of the steam locomotives that this machine is joining in this railway's locomotive fleet. And frankly, I don't think they could have possibly designed a less aesthetically pleasing locomotive. In fact, it looks like a giant green dumpster. It literally looks like a dumpster. All it needs is a waste management logo sticker on the side, and it would just look like a big dumpster. And it would be one thing if this was a transit railway, a commuter railway, but it's not. It's this railway's sole purpose since it was founded in 1866 was to serve tourists that are going to the top of the mountain. And while at the time that the railway was built, there was nothing particularly novel about steam traction, nowadays, the fact that the railway is still steam operated is one of its main attractions as a tourist operation, which is what it's been since the beginning. I know the main reason I was been wanting to go to this railway for years is because I wanted to ride in front of a steam locomotive and to see a real steam locomotive, which is not something you could see normally. People are willing to drive hundreds of miles to see and ride behind real steam engines, and uh, this locomotive really does not. It's a really poor choice. And of course, just having a diesel locomotive that could be prepared for use very quickly and provide faster services up the mountain so people could stay up there longer, that's not a bad idea. But the thing is that they seem to, based on what I've read, there seems to be an intention to actually mostly sort of dieselize their service and they've built a number of locomotives since 2008. I believe they've built a total of four or five, and it seems like their intent is to mostly have a dieselized service and then have the steam service be something sort of on the side that they might do occasionally or do less often, or not even retire steam, of course not, but uh, mainly replace it with a diesel service and possibly, have steam something that, on certain days they might bring out their steam locomotives, or, if, the weather's permitting, or if they have a large volume of traffic that day, something is sort of a special treat and not something to necessarily expect every day when you go there. You're not guaranteed to be able to see or ride in front of the steam locomotives. And to me, that's seriously the prospect that I could travel, a day from where I live, and then not get, and then have to ride in front of a diesel. instead of a steam locomotive. Like the thought that I could go to this place and pretty much be guaranteed 100% steam propelled service was one of the main reasons I was extremely excited for years about hopefully going to the Mount Washington Cog Railway. And I know these decisions aren't things that they take lightly. Their environmental concerns about the use of steam locomotives, being coal fired on the mountain, like this the smoke spoiling the the view of the mountain, or causing pollution or something like that, or just wanting to provide a faster service and a less expensive service, having to maintain these 100-year-old locomotives. And so those are all legitimate concerns, and I'm not trying to just like, oh, those evil people, they're dieselizing it, and diesels suck. But to dieselize, not only dieselize the service to any extent, to any significant extent, where diesels are going to mostly take over from the steam locomotives, and steam's not going to be something that's going to happen necessarily every day or all the time. Not no longer running a full schedule just on steam locomotives. That's pretty much a shame for a railway that's remained 100% steam for so many decades. But in addition to that, the diesel locomotives themselves are just they're ugly. This I don't intrinsically hate diesels, but these are not good looking diesel locomotives. If I wanted to ride in front of a diesel, I could do that on the transit commuter railway that's 2 miles away from my house, and not drive hundreds of miles out of my way to drive behind something that's frankly even uglier than and less appealing, visually appealing than the normal everyday transit railway that's 2 miles from my house that I actually use to get around. Now, the reason I'm so harsh on how aesthetically unappealing this locomotive is because it does not in any way hearken to the engineering or legacy of this railway. Now, there's another railway in Wales. It's the Snowdon Mountain Railway, and they also they have had a fleet of steam locomotives. They had a very distinct visual style. They were immortalized in the Reverend W. Audrey's book, Mountain Engines, which immortalized those locomotives and made them famous. That's how I learned about. That's the first rack railway I've ever learned of. And it came time to introduce some diesels into the fleet as well to provide faster service, to reduce the maintenance costs if there's an emergency or something where a steam locomotive breaks down and they need a rescue engine to come in and take over. They could prepare. It makes too much sense not to have diesel locomotives in addition to steam locomotives. What you're seeing here is the a locomotive from the Snowdon Mountain Railway, and what I'm going to show you next is the design for the diesel locomotives that have joined the fleet. They haven't replaced steam, but they've supplemented it. They don't necessarily fire up their steam locomotives every day. You're not guaranteed a steam locomotive when you go there, but they have these diesels as well. And the diesel locomotives, these at least look like a proper successor to the steam locomotives, though they've deliberately designed these locomotives to be visually appealing and to be a true, proper, logical successor to the way the steam locomotives look. They don't look out of place side by side. They have exposed engines, so they're visually interesting to look at. They have prominent crankshafts on the sides, so you have something to visually look at to substitute for the fact that there's no reciprocating piston cylinder assembly like in a steam locomotive, but instead you have these big crankshafts that you could see as the locomotive pushes the train up the mountain, and they look visually. They harken back to the original steam locomotives that they're joining, and I like the way these diesel locomotives on the Snowdon Mountain Railway look. They look like an appropriate successor to the steam locomotives. As I've said it before, they look side by side. You can see the visual lineage between the steam locomotives and these diesel locomotives, whereas on the Mount Washington Cog Railway, these new diesels that they're building have no visible moving parts on them. They have little to no character. They look like big dumpsters to me. And so even if you want to bring in the reasons that they want to dieselize it, they make economic sense. But uh, to lose uh, to lose steam as something as a main keystone of your service is really going to, I think, harm the tourist appeal of the railway. And the railway's purpose is to serve as a tourist attraction. And if you want to have, there's a railway in Switzerland that they dieselized their service, and they brought in diesel locomotives and diesel rail cars, and the tourist appeal of their railway wasn't as strong as it was anymore. And what they ended up doing was they decided that the best solution, because people want to see steam locomotives, but they didn't want to have to, they wanted a faster service, a more fuel efficient, faster, cleaner locomotive. So how do you have a modern fleet of locomotives and have faster service, more fuel efficient, and cleaner service? And how they solved that problem was they built a brand new fleet of fully modern steam locomotives. These locomotives were built in 1992 or 3, and then they were also built in 1996. These locomotives are brand new. They're only 12 years old. And while steam locomotives have fallen by the wayside as a primary power source, that technology hasn't been developed for mainstream transit railways in a modern setting. Steam technology has still been developed. It's still in use. It's used in power plants and nuclear reactors and all sorts of in district heating grids. Steam technology has still been developed. So, and the development of that technology can be applied into a fully modern, fully up-to-date steam locomotive burning biodiesel, enormously more efficient, faster, cleaner than not only the original steam locomotives of the 19th century and early 20th century, but also more efficient. This railway that built these new steam locomotives, these new locomotives are more efficient, and and they're more fuel efficient and cleaner and economical than the diesel trains that they replaced. They actually replaced their diesel fleet with these new steam locomotives, and what they found was that tourists don't necessarily care that these locomotives are new. They don't mind that these locomotives are only like a few, were built, in the late 1990s, not even 20 years old yet. They don't mind that they aren't the historical locomotives. They just want to see and ride in front of steam, and that was the main factor. So I hope that maybe they could possibly consider the possibility of building a scratch-built, a modern steam locomotive fleet for the Mount Washington Cog Railway, or perhaps take after the Snowden Mountain Railway and consider a more aesthetically appropriate and appealing diesel locomotive design. But really, the thought of going to traveling a day out of my way, possibly all, of course, booking a hotel room and stuff like that, and then going to this railway and then getting to see these really ugly looking diesels that are very, I it it reduces my interests in saving up to travel to the Mount Washington Cog Railway. Unfortunately, and I'm not saying this to diss the people running it. I know they're doing the best they can. They're trying to run a business, and they're making the best decisions they're able to. But that's just how I feel about it. So that's how I feel about dieselization on the Mount Washington Cog Railway. And thank you very much for watching.